So this is pretty disturbing. You've probably seen this all across the internet in Japan. A woman went to work at a Pokemon store in Tokyo, and then something absolutely horrifying happened. And Pokemon Center is a place filled with kids, families, the last place you expect anything bad to happen. Because here's the thing. At first, the news made this sound like a random attack happening at the Pokemon store. A man walks into the store and suddenly stabs an employee. But as more details came out, a different picture started to form. Because this wasn't a random attack. This was targeted. And at first, people thought this guy went to stab the clerk because he was an obsessed Pokemon fan and didn't get the card he wanted, or that he was some kind of scalper and they refused to give him the cards that he wanted. And really, I can see why people would think that would be the case. Because unfortunately, you see more and more cases of untreated and undiagnosed mental health disorders in Japan that really are left untreated. And because of this, it can really build up to horrifying consequences. But this time, that wasn't the case. Because the man who entered the Pokemon store and stabbed this young woman, this was someone she already knew, and someone she had a history with, and someone she had actually gone to the police about and got a restraining order against him. And here's the thing, when people think of Japan, they think safety, clean streets, low crime, a place where you can go to anywhere, anytime, without worrying about your safety. And at a Pokemon store, this is probably one of the last places you expect anything violent to happen. But on March 26, 2026, that image was completely shattered. Can you imagine that scene for a second? You're in the Pokemon store and all of a sudden, a guy with a knife comes in and starts to suddenly stab a Pokemon staff member. Then the next thing you hear is screaming, panic, and people running in every direction, and everything turning to chaos in seconds. But the most disturbing part came later on, because investigators quickly realized that the man who stabbed and murdered this female employee at the Pokemon store was actually her ex-boyfriend, who she had a restraining order against, and who had been stalking her. And this story unfortunately gets worse, because this isn't the first stalking incident. Because she had already reported him to the police, got a restraining order out, and even hid at her relative's house just to lay low so he wouldn't find her. And while others told her that she should really quit her job because of the stalker, she ultimately refused to let fear dictate how she lived. And she did everything she could to protect herself, but he still came after her. And to me, what makes the story so difficult is not just the violence itself. It's the fact that there were so many warning signs leading up to this, because it wasn't random, it wasn't unpredictable, and it wasn't something that just came out of nowhere. It was something that was built up over time. And even though she did all the right steps, it still wasn't enough. And cases like this really point to a broader issue. Because stalking incidents in Japan are not uncommon. And while there are laws that exist to deal with them, enforcement and protection don't always go far enough, especially when that person is persistent, emotionally unstable, and especially when they refuse to get the mental help that they so desperately need. And in the end, this monster who brutally murdered this innocent girl took his own life. So really, he was too much of a coward to face the consequences of what he did. And it's absolutely disgusting, and he deserves a far worse fate than what he got. But the unfortunate reality is this. Even when the victims do everything right, they report the situation, tell the police, get a restraining order, and they follow all the proper steps, there are still gaps in the system. Because unless someone crosses a certain line, it can be difficult to take stronger and more immediate actions. And by the time that line is crossed, it's often too late. And also, what makes this incident so devastating is that it didn't happen in a dark alley, it didn't happen at night, it didn't happen where she was alone. It happened where there were so many people around her in broad daylight in one of the busiest parts of Tokyo. And because of this, people across the world were shocked. Not just because of what happened, but because of what it represents. A situation where the victim did everything right, everything they could do, and still it wasn't safe and it wasn't enough. Now, it's important to say this, that Japan is still one of the safest countries in the world. And incidences like this happening in broad daylight are pretty rare. But rare, unfortunately, doesn't mean impossible. And kind of incidences like this are a reminder that even in the safest places, we still need to be careful. And if you look online at the comments about this story, there are so many people saying that something should have been done before it got to that point. And in regards to stalking and harassment, more needs to be proactively done to discourage this type of horrific behavior. But what can really be done in the future so incidences like this don't happen again? Let me know your ideas in the comment section down below. And if you think this is worth discussing, then please share this video to spread awareness. And until next time everyone, stay waku waku.
And if you're interested in topics like these and want to stay up to date on all things Japan, then please subscribe. And if you're interested in Japan, then you know what? You should probably learn some Japanese. So make sure you check out my free Japanese cheat sheet where I share with you the 5 simple but costly mistakes that the majority of people just starting to learn Japanese make and how you can avoid it. And you'll definitely want to check out this next video about what Japanese people really think about the President of the United States, Donald Trump, with everything that's going on right now, because it's probably not what you think. And until next time everyone, stay waku waku.